Good morning and welcome to this edition of the Phase Broadcasts. We're very pleased to welcome you back with us today, and for those of you who've never been with us, we're really pleased that you decided to join us for this broadcast, which is aimed at unconventional FSBs, or really those FSBs whose main business is doing something else. We've got a really exciting lineup of speakers today. Let me introduce myself. I'm Shireen Otir. I'm from the Phase Department at the FSB. With me in the studio is Michelle Naidoo, also from the FSB, Alan Holton, who is from Compliance Monitoring Systems, and Velashni Naidoo, also from the FSB. And we have another guest who's going to be joining us a little bit later. Good morning, everyone, and welcome.
Good morning, Shireen.
We really are pleased to be able to speak to you today because we think that the unconventional FSBs sometimes battle to find their way amongst the legislation and all the requirements that they have to deal with. So we're going to try and unpack some of the mysteries of the FSB and the phase legislation today. If we take a look at the agenda, then you'll see that what we're going to be looking at is the overview of the FSB, which Michelle is going to be doing. We're going to be talking about juristic representatives, and Alan has a particular passion about juristic representatives and other activities that are particularly important to the unconventional FSBs. And then we're going to be talking about disclosures. We'll then take a tea break of 10 minutes, and after tea, we'll be talking about suitability analysis. We'll be joined by Claudia Molabatsi at that stage. And then we'll spend quite a bit of time on premium collection, because I think that's an area that a lot of FSBs battle with from time to time. We'll have a second tea break, which will be our last tea break, and then we will finish off with a discussion on operational ability and financial soundness. We'll be looking at regulatory examinations and exemptions, conflict of interest, and we'll finish off with amendments to Section 13. And I hope that you will also find this interesting and that you will be participating. Now, the way that you can participate in this broadcast is by speaking to the facilitator in the venue that you are attending, and then actually send us SMSs. We receive the SMSs in the studio, and I will then be posing your questions to our panel of speakers today. And we'll do our absolute best to answer all of your questions. If there are any questions that we are unable to answer due to time constraints, or because it is really technical and we need to be able to unpack it in greater detail than that this session allows, we will post written answers to those questions on the FSB's website. You can find presentations of previous broadcasts as well as free questions that were asked in the past and that we've answered in writing on the FSB website. If you go to the phase page, and right at the bottom of the phase page, you'll find a link that says communication. If you click on the communication link, it will then give you a number of options. And the option where you will find presentations and questions that have been answered is under the presentations link. You'll see it's actually organized according to the year in which the presentations were presented, and it gives you a number of options. So we've got 2013 presentations, 2012, etc. You'll also find information on our previous conferences if there's any of you who would like to just revisit and refresh your memory of some of the discussions we've had in the past. Now, without further ado, we're going to start, and I'm going to ask Michelle to just explain a little bit about how the FSB actually functions. Now, I think a lot of people hear about the FSB, but they're not sure exactly what it is that the FSB does and how it is that we function. Michelle?
Thank you, Shireen. Okay. The FSB's vision is to promote and maintain sound financial investment environment in South Africa. This is underpinned by the mission of the FSB, which is to promote the fair treatment of customers of financial services and products, financial soundness of financial institutions, and the systematic stability of financial services industry, and the integrity of financial markets and institutions. A bit about the Financial Advisory and Intermediary Services Division, which we call FASE, or FISE, as some people might pronounce it. We have 4 departments. The first one is registration, that deals with new applications, profile changes, the updating of Central Rep Register, the approval of mandates and application forms for discretionary and administrative FSPs, the lapsing of licenses, and the liaison with the FSB Finance Department regarding levies. Then you have the Supervision Department, which deals with risk-based supervision approach to the financial services providers. We also do the analysis of financial statements, compliance reports and handover reports, on-site visits to FSPs and compliance practices, liaison with industry regarding the changes in subordinate legislation. The compliance department deals with complaints against FSPs that cannot be dealt with by the FAIS Ombud, as well as the investigating into the affairs of FSPs and regulatory actions such as withdrawals and suspensions, updating debarments on the Central Rep Register, as well as the reinstatement of representatives on the Central Register. The Enforcement Department deals with the interaction between the FAIS Division and the FSB Enforcement Committee. The interaction is broadly around the preparation of matters that the Registrar of the FSPs deems necessary to refer for possible administrative sanction. They also deal with the updating of debarments on the Central Register, as well as the reinstatement of representatives onto the Central Register.
Michelle, before you carry on, I think what you mentioned about the registration department is really important, and a lot of FSPs don't understand this. Michelle mentioned profile changes, and that's a term that we use when an existing FSP, so you've already been authorized, you've got a license, and you actually want to make some changes to that license, and that is then called a profile change. And some examples of a profile change would be as simple as your email address has changed, or your contact person has changed. And I'm sure that my colleagues here will agree, both Alan from a compliance function as well as us from the FSB, that this is probably one of the areas that most FSPs fall foul of the legislation. They just don't realize how important it is to keep the registrar updated of the changes in their business practices.
Yes.
Yes. And the legislative requirement is that any changes done to the business or the FSP has to be related to the registrar within 15 days of that change.
And that's what we call condition 1 of your license. So those documents that you got with your license way back when you got your license, that actually gives you the conditions of the license. And the very first one says that you have to keep us updated of any changes in how you function. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay. As Shireen mentioned, our focus today is on unconventional financial services providers, or FSPs. And our thoughts around this is that these are FSPs that do not do FAIS-related services as their mainstream business, and is therefore not their mainstream income. Examples of these are motor vehicle dealers, travel insurers, retailers, auditors, accountants, and tax practitioners. These are not all the unconventional FSPs, but these are the most common ones that we have come across in our interaction with FSPs. I'm going to explain a bit about the categories of FSPs we have, which is category 1, which is your FSP that is authorized to provide advice and intermediary services. Your category 2 FSP, which is a discretionary FSP. Your category 2A FSP, which is your hedge fund FSP. Your category 3 FSP, which is an administrative FSP, and the category 4 FSP, which is assistance business FSPs. Our focus today is going to be on category 1 FSPs, because the assumption we've made is that the unconventional FSPs that do not do FAIS-related activities as their mainstream business would be a category 1 FSP.